Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are wrestling with a source text that, well, many people find really challenging, maybe the single most difficult passage in Jesus' teachings.
It's definitely up there.
The parable of the shrewd manager, or sometimes the dishonest manager. It's Luke 16, verses 1 to 13. And the moment you read it, it just stops you. It's confusing. You've got this story about a manager, right? He's caught red-handed, basically wasting his boss's money.
Yeah, mismanaging assets.
And then, knowing he's fired, he uses his last bit of authority to, well, it looks like cook the books to make friends for himself.
Right, seems pretty dodgy.
But then the master praises him, praises the dishonest manager. It sounds, frankly, like Jesus is saying shrewd crime is okay, and we know that can't be right.
No, definitely not the takeaway.
So what on earth did the master actually praise? Let's try and unpack this big question.
Absolutely. That paradox, that apparent contradiction, that's our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at core Christian teaching here, and it's aimed specifically at disciples. Jesus calls them the sons of light.
Okay.
So to figure this out, we need to do a couple of things. First, really try to shed our modern assumptions and understand the first century cultural context, finance, authority, all that.
Right, the background matters hugely here.
Hugely. And second, we absolutely cannot read this parable in isolation. It comes immediately after another major story.
The Prodigal Son.
Exactly. Luke 15. They're back-to-back for a reason.
Okay, so comparing them is key.
It's essential. We compare the manager's financial disaster with the son's, well, spiritual and personal disaster. And by doing that, we can pull out some really vital, practical lessons.
Lessons about what specifically?
About stewardship, really. How we, as people who manage things temporarily, our time, our talents, our money, how we should use these fleeting resources. Use them with the same kind of urgency and smarts that the sons of this age use for worldly gain.
But aimed at eternal things.
Precisely. Applying that shrewdness towards eternal outcomes.
Okay, sounds like a plan. It's a shortcut, maybe, to understanding a passage that's baffled people for, well, centuries.
Yeah, if you've ever been confused by Luke 16, you are definitely not alone.
All right, let's dive in. Starting right at the beginning. The moment these two guys, the manager and the son, hit absolute rock bottom.
Okay, the manager. His situation is just total collapse. He wasn't just some employee, he was a steward. That means he was likely managing almost everything for his rich master.
Like a CEO of the whole estate.
Pretty much. Investments, debts, income, the whole operation. But he wasn't the owner, remember, just the temporary manager.
Yeah.
And the text just says he was accused of wasting the master's stuff.
Doesn't even say how, just that he was caught.
Right. An accusation is made, and boom, the master believes it. Instantly.
And the fallout is immediate, not let's investigate, but
No suspension. It's turn over the accounts now. You're fired.
total humiliation, career over, status gone, just like that.
Yeah. And that sets up this moment of, like, existential dread for him. He's suddenly jobless, disgraced, a complete vacuum in his life.
So he starts thinking through his options.
He does this quick mental calculation and realizes he's got nothing.
He thinks about manual labor, right? Digging.
Yeah, I cannot dig. But it's more than just physical strength, you know.
How so?
Well, think about it. A manager in that society, he'd have soft hands. That was a sign of his status, his authority. He wasn't calloused like a field worker.
Ah, okay.
So to suddenly try and join the manual labor class doing that heavy, back-breaking work, it would be a complete betrayal of who he was. His body, his social standing, just not built for it.
Makes sense. So option 2, begging.
Equally bad, maybe worse for his pride. He says he's ashamed to beg. And begging wasn't quiet back then.
Right, it was public, loud.
Very public. Highly visible. It's basically him announcing his total failure and destitution to the whole community that used to respect him. He couldn't face that shame. His reputation was ruined.
So digging is out, begging is out. He's completely stuck.
An absolute dead end. No way forward.
Okay, now let's pivot, like you said, to the story right before this one. The Prodigal Son. His crisis looks different on the surface, but how does it mirror the manager's?
Well, the son definitely engineered his own downfall. But we often miss just how offensive his initial act was.
Asking for his inheritance early.
Yeah. In that Middle Eastern culture, demanding your share while your father is still alive and well, it was incredibly disrespectful. It was almost like saying, "Dad, I wish you were dead so I could have your money."
Wow. That blunt.
Pretty much. It's valuing the stuff over the relationship, over the father himself. hugely unfilial. And what's truly amazing is the father actually agrees.
Instead of kicking him out or shaming him.
Right, he basically lets the son wound him, divides the property, and gives him his share, lets him walk away with it.
And the son, predictably, blows it all.
Completely. Riotous living, the text says, ends up broke in a foreign land, starving. And the only job he can get, feeding pigs.
Which, for a Jewish person, is the absolute bottom.
The absolute lowest point. Pigs were ritually unclean. To handle them, feed them, and then be so hungry he actually wants to eat their food. I mean, he just obliterated his identity. Spiritually, socially, culturally, gone.
So, like the manager.
He's hit his dead end, too. Fallen from a place of privilege and belonging to utter, status-crushing desperation.
Okay, so we've got these two figures. Both have failed spectacularly. The manager failed his master financially. The son failed his father relationally and financially.
Both have run up a debt they absolutely cannot repay. Wasted assets, wasted life, wasted relationships.
And the key point here is it's their own fault.
Entirely self-inflicted ruin, yes. They can't work their way back, can't dig, they can't rely on charity, too ashamed to beg. They are completely trapped by their own failures.
And they need something radical, something outside themselves.
Exactly. Because the path they created leads nowhere good. And the manager, seeing this with perhaps brutal clarity, decides he has to act fast and strategically.
Okay, so the manager's move, this brilliant, if morally dubious plan, it only makes sense if we get the context right. His authority, the financial system.
Precisely. As the master steward, he had real power over the finances. Debt collection was part of that.
And there's this background thing about Jewish law.
Yes, crucial point. Jewish law strictly forbade charging interest usury to fellow Jews. Exodus 22, Leviticus 25, Deuteronomy 23. It's clear.
But people still needed to lend money and make a living, so how did that work?
Well, there were ways around it, or perceived ways. Sometimes lenders would inflate the principal amount of the loan in goods, kind of hiding the interest charge within the commodity itself. Or a manager might add his own fees on top.
Okay, so that leads to the first interpretation, the common one you hear, the commission theory.
Right. Our sources mention this as a prevailing view. The idea is that the manager was secretly padding the bills, adding his own personal commission, his own cut, onto what the debtors actually owed the master.
So, like, if someone owed the master 100 jars of oil.
A huge amount, by the way. All of it was valuable.
Right. The manager might write the IOU for, say, 120 jars. The master's due is 100, but the manager plans to skim the extra 20 for himself.
Exactly. Using his position to enrich himself by squeezing the master's debtors. Quietly, illicitly.
Okay, so he gets fired, but the paperwork isn't finalized yet. He still technically has authority for a short window.
A very narrow window. The books aren't officially handed over. And he thinks, aha, if I use this last shred of power to cancel those debts.
Or at least the part he added on. Or maybe just the big chunk of the legitimate debt.
Yeah, maybe specifically the commission part, or maybe just slashing the totals significantly. The effect is the same. He instantly creates powerful allies.
Because these debtors are suddenly off the hook for a massive amount.
Exactly. He calls them in, one by one. The guy who owes 100 measures of oil. Quick, sit down, take your bill, write 50.
Wow, a 50% discount.
Huge. Another guy owes 100 containers of wheat. Take your bill, write 80. He's essentially canceling the most crushing part of their debt. Maybe the illegal interest, maybe his own skimmed amount, maybe just a chunk of the principal owed to the master.
And the result?
Immediate gratitude. These debtors now legally owe this much lower amount. They're overjoyed. They owe this manager big time socially, financially.
So when he's officially out on the street, they'll welcome him, give him room and board.
That's the plan. He's secured his earthly future using the master's assets, or maybe just his own illicit gains, to buy goodwill and future security. It's pure self-preservation. Calculated, shrewd.
Okay, but hold on. This is where it gets really tricky, isn't it? The text still calls him the dishonest manager.
Yes, it does. That label sticks.
And his actions, especially since he knew he was fired, were still fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
Technically illegal.
Arguably, yes. He's acting ultra vires, beyond his legitimate authority at that point.
So is Jesus really saying the ends justify the means? Like, if I cheat on my taxes but give the money to charity, that's shrewd. That can't be it.
That cannot be it. And that's the confusion that forces us deeper into that second interpretation which our sources really lean into. The master did not praise the manager for being dishonest.
Okay.
The text is specific. He praised his shrewdness, his phronimos, his practical wisdom, his foresight, his cleverness in securing his future.
So the praise wasn't for the act of fraud, but for something else.
For the insight behind the act,
Hmm?
specifically his profound understanding of the master's true character.
How does that work? If he was just canceling his own illegal commission, the master didn't lose anything, right? So the praise seems mild.
Exactly. But what if the debt reduction wasn't just his commission? What if it came directly out of the master's pocket? What if the manager was canceling legitimate debt owed to the master?
Ah! Now the master's losing something significant.
Very significant. The source suggests the manager wasn't just covering his own tracks, he was banking on the master's known inherent generosity. He was using the master's mercy to grant mercy.
Okay, but wouldn't that make the master angry? Why praise him for giving away the master's wealth? And why wouldn't the master just reverse it all and prosecute him?
This is where the cultural context of honor and shame comes back in. The manager was making a huge gamble, but it was a calculated one based on his deep knowledge of the master.
He knew the master wouldn't undo it.
He banked on it. Once the master's manager acting publicly in the master's name, even if improperly had granted this mercy, reducing these debts, for the master to then publicly reverse it.
That was bad.
Terrible, especially for a rich man dealing with poorer debtors. He'd look cruel, greedy, unreliable. It would destroy his public reputation for generosity and mercy.
So the manager knew the master valued his reputation for kindness more than the money itself.
That seems to be the insight. He knew the master was fundamentally forgiving, merciful, generous. Maybe even that the master disapproved of excessive burdens on debtors, even if legal. The manager finally got his master. He understood the master's heart.
Wow, okay. That reframes everything. The shrewdness wasn't the cheating. It was understanding the master so well that he knew he could rely on the master's grace to cover the cost of his actions.
Precisely. He used the master's own character, the master's own resources, his wealth, his reputation for mercy to secure his future. And the master saw that. He recognized that the manager, in his desperation, finally understood him. And that's what he praised. The insight, the reliance on grace, not works.
Okay, that idea, the manager banking entirely on the master's grace, his generous character that connects perfectly back to the prodigal son, doesn't it, when the son finally gets it?
It flows seamlessly. Think about the son's plan when he was starving in the pig pen. What was his strategy?
It was all about earning his way back, right? Make me like one of your hired servants.
Exactly. Purely merit-based. He wasn't even going to ask to be a son again. He planned to accept the lowest possible status, a hired hand, basically an outsider working for wages. He was ready to sacrifice his identity just to survive, to try and earn his keep.
But the father's reaction just completely overrides that plan.
Totally. The father doesn't wait for the carefully rehearsed speech. He sees his son coming from a long way off, and he runs.
Which you said was undignified for an elder, a man of status in that culture.
Deeply undignified. It showed frantic, urgent, unstoppable love. He runs, embraces his filthy son, kisses him, accepting him fully before the son could even finish his repentance plea, his merit-based offer.
And he doesn't just give him a meal and a place to sleep.
No way. It's full restoration. The best robe that's honor restored, the ring that's authority, sonship, legal standing back, sandals only free men wore sandals, servants went barefoot.
So it's immediate, overwhelming acceptance. Grace, not wages.
Complete grace.
Yeah.
The son never had to be a servant, not even for a minute. His whole plan to earn his way back was just bypassed. He was restored as a son, instantly and fully.
So putting these two parables side by side, Luke 15 and Luke 16, what's the picture of God that emerges?
It's incredibly consistent. Both the manager's master and the prodigal's father reveal God's character. Unconditionally merciful, overwhelmingly generous, willing to forgive enormous debts, huge failures.
But there's still that tension, right? The manager was fired.
Yes, and that's crucial too. Justice and mercy together. The master had to fire the manager. Why? Because God is holy. He cannot just wink at sin, at dishonesty, at wastefulness.
So the firing represents God's justice, his intolerance of sin.
I think so. The manager lost his job because of his actions. Just like our sin separates us from God, from his glory, there are consequences.
But in that same story, the master provides this unexpected way out. He honors the debt cancellation, praises the manager's insight.
Exactly. It's like God, while upholding justice, simultaneously provides this radical path to restoration through grace. He doesn't compromise his holiness, but he makes a way.
And that way involves a cost, doesn't it, in both stories?
Absolutely. The manager canceling those debts. If our interpretation is right, that came directly from the master's wealth. It cost the master financially.
And the prodigal son's restoration. The father running cost him his dignity. The feast cost him resources.
Right. Forgiveness and restoration aren't cheap. And this is where the symbolism points directly to the gospel, to our own situation.
How so?
Well, the manager had a debt he couldn't repay. The prodigal son wasted everything and couldn't earn his way back. And the teaching is, we too have sinned, we've fallen short, we have a spiritual debt to God that is utterly unpayable by our own efforts. Our works, our merits, our attempts to dig or beg our way back, they're insufficient.
So the master paying the cost, that's the parallel to Christ.
That's the heart of it. Just like the debt reduction ultimately came from the master's resources, costing him, our spiritual debt is paid by Jesus' sacrifice. His death on the cross is the master's resource. His own son used to wipe away our debt, our sins, our trespasses.
So acceptance isn't based on us cleaning ourselves up first or promising to be better servants.
Not at all. It's offered entirely on grace, because the payment was made by the master, through Christ. It's not based on our worthiness. It's based on his generosity.
So the shrewd manager, in a way, modeled what we're supposed to do. Realize we can't fix it ourselves and throw ourselves completely on the master's mercy.
That seems to be the core lesson. What the master praised was the manager finally realizing his only hope lay in abandoning self-effort and relying entirely on the master's generous character. That character, that grace, access through Christ, is what secures our future, our eternal dwellings.
Okay, so if that's the theology behind it, what's the practical application? Jesus wasn't just telling a clever story, he was giving instructions, right?
Definitely. He's teaching his disciples a whole strategy for life. The parable is meant to provoke a shift in how we think about, well, what we invest in.
And you mentioned the audience is key here. He's talking to the sons of light, his followers.
Yes. And he hits them with this really challenging comparison. He says, look, the sons of this age, people focused on this world, whose values are temporary, earthly, they're often much shrewder, much more strategic, much more, frankly, urgent in planning for their earthly future.
Than Christians are in planning for their eternal future.
Ouch. It's a stark challenge.
Yeah.
Why are worldly people sometimes more dedicated to securing temporary gain than believers are to securing eternal reality?
Which leads right into that phrase, unrighteous wealth or unrighteous mammon. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean, like, dirty money?
That's a common misunderstanding. Mammon is just an Aramaic word for wealth or possessions, material stuff. The adjective often translated unrighteous can also mean unreliable, unstable, fleeting.
Okay. So it's not necessarily about how the money was earned.
Not primarily, no. Our sources clarify it's more about the nature of the wealth itself. Earthly money, possessions, they are inherently temporary. They don't last. They're unreliable as a foundation for ultimate security. Money itself isn't evil. It's neutral. How you use it makes it righteous or unrighteous in its effect.
Got it. So Jesus is saying, take this temporary, unreliable stuff, our money, yes, but also our time, our skills, our influence.
All those temporary resources.
And use them strategically to make friends. Invest in things with eternal value so that when this earthly wealth inevitably fails, as it will,
because it will fail you eventually,
they'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. You'll have invested in what truly lasts.
Exactly. The emphasis is on the failure of earthly wealth. It just doesn't last. It depreciates. Its value changes. Ultimately, it can't buy off death or secure your eternity.
You used that example earlier, finding an old box of money from, say, 60 or 70 years ago.
Right. Even if the notes are preserved, what's the actual purchasing power? If there was hyperinflation, it might be wallpaper. Even if it's not exchanging it today, that one-to-one conversion rate doesn't reflect what it could buy back then.
Like how $100,000 or pounds or whatever might have bought a huge house decades ago, but today maybe only gets you a down payment on a small apartment or a car.
Perfect example of transience. Money's power erodes. It's unstable. We're just temporary managers of this inherently unreliable asset.
So if we know it's unreliable, why do we pour so much energy into getting more of it? The source used that lottery analogy, which was quite striking.
Yeah, it really highlights our sometimes irrational behavior, doesn't it? Think about how much money globally goes into lotteries. People faithfully spend, say, $50 a week, £20 a week, whatever it is.
For a chance of winning that is astronomically small.
Tiny, like 1 in 20 million, 1 in 50 million. Statistically, you're often more likely to get hit by lightning or be in a plane crash.
Yet people keep buying the tickets, planning, hoping for this tiny chance of temporary wealth.
Exactly. They're being shrewd in a worldly sense, planning for this incredibly unlikely event.
Yeah.
But then look at the flip side. What happens when people do win big?
Right, the statistics are pretty grim.
Studies consistently show something like 60, maybe 70% of major lottery winners end up financially worse off within a few years. The money brings problems, mismanagement, ruin.
And even worse.
Alarmingly, maybe 1 or 2% even lose their lives directly or indirectly because of the win. Attracts conflict, violence, danger.
That's the paradox Jesus is pointing to, isn't it? People eagerly embrace a tiny chance of huge temporary gain, even though it comes with a massive risk of ending up poor or even dead.
They accept that risk for earthly reward.
Yet when it comes to investing time or money in things with guaranteed eternal value, things related to faith, to helping others, to kingdom work, we hesitate, we procrastinate, we act like that's the risky investment.
Yeah. The sons of this age are shrewd about an uncertain earthly future, while the sons of light can be surprisingly lax about a certain eternal one.
It really forces you to look at how you manage all God's assets, not just money, time especially.
Time is perhaps the most critical asset we manage. We all claim to be too busy, right?
Yeah.
The universal excuse.
Guilty as charged.
We all feel it. But look around. You see genuinely busy people. Some manage to keep their marriages strong, stay involved in church, be present for their families. They prioritize.
While others
Others use busy as the reason to let those vital relationships wither. Or their spiritual life gets completely sidelined for work or other pursuits.
and that time trade-off, it has real, sometimes eternal costs.
Absolutely. Think of a parent who constantly sacrifices family time for more income. They might provide material things, but they lose connection, influence. Gifts are a poor substitute for presence.
Kids remember you being at their game, not necessarily the brand of shoes you bought them.
Exactly. They value the time, the shared experience. That's a priceless investment in a relationship. We need to apply that same strategic thinking, what yields the best eternal return, to how we use our time and resources for God's kingdom.
So investing in eternal dwellings, what does that look like practically? If our stuffed chairs, clothes, buildings, money won't last, what should we be strategically investing in?
The sources boil it down to essentially two main categories of activity that bridge time and eternity, things that last forever.
Okay, what are they?
First, worship. Praising God, loving Him, serving Him. That's something we start here, and it continues nonstop in heaven. It's an eternal activity.
Makes sense. And the second?
Evangelism and making disciples. Bringing people into a relationship with Christ, helping them find salvation so they can enter those eternal dwellings, investing in people's souls.
So using our temporary resources, time, money, energy, to facilitate worship or to help someone find faith, that's converting temporary assets into eternal ones.
That's the core idea. You're taking unstable mammon and turning it into something with guaranteed lasting value.
And this isn't just an abstract idea. God actually uses us to do this work, right?
Yes, that's the incredible thing. God is all-powerful. He doesn't need us, but He chooses to work through His people, through the body of Christ. We are His hands and feet in the world.
So when someone needs help, God often prompts one of us to use our energy, our skills.
Or our money. When there's a need, He uses our temporary wealth to meet it. We become instruments of His eternal purposes, temporary managers distributing the Master's kindness and resources.
That really should change how we see our daily choices, shouldn't it? Am I building my own little temporary kingdom, or am I strategically investing in something much bigger, something lasting?
It shifts the whole calculus. Are we thinking generationally, eternally?
You mentioned a case study in the sources that makes it really concrete. The German immigrants in Australia.
Yeah, it's a powerful example. Around 200 years ago, groups of German Lutherans settled in places like the Barossa Valley near Adelaide. Many were fleeing religious persecution in Europe.
So their faith was central to their reason for being there.
Absolutely central. And because of that, their focus wasn't primarily on building huge personal fortunes or fancy private houses. They weren't aiming to become the wealthiest individuals.
What did they invest in?
They strategically pooled their temporary resources, their labor, their money, their skills, to build permanent shared community assets. Assets that would serve the kingdom in their community for generations to come.
Like what?
Like churches. Beautiful, solid, often stone churches that are still standing and used today, over 100, 150 years later. And critically, schools. They established a whole network of Lutheran schools, the source mentioned, over 70 nationally now, stemming from those early investments.
Wow, that's long-term thinking. Using temporary wealth for lasting impact.
Exactly. They were investing their unrighteous mammon, shrewdly for eternal purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Worship, education, community, passing on the faith.
And you see the benefit today.
Immensely.
Mm.
Current congregations use these amazing historic church buildings. The source mentioned one example where the local congregation pays maybe just $100 a week rent for full use of the facilities, Monday to Friday. Why? Because previous generations already pay the capital cost.
They're reaping the rewards of past stewardship.
They are. But the source has this really interesting final point about responsibility.
Mm.
It's not enough for the current generation to just be like tenants.
What's the difference?
Well, a tenant just pays the minimum rent and expects the landlord to fix everything, right? They don't feel ownership.
Okay.
But a family member takes ownership. They see the shared asset, the church building, the school, as part of their inheritance, their responsibility.
So they pitch in.
Yeah. They join the working bees to clean up. They volunteer time and skills. They contribute financially toward upkeep or new things the community needs, like maybe replacing chairs for events. They invest because it's their family's eternal home, not just some place they're renting temporarily.
That's a great analogy for our own eternal stewardship. We're not just tenants passing through. We're family members responsible for investing in the family's future.
Precisely. It connects right back to using our temporary resources with that sense of ownership and eternal purpose. #outro. So, pulling it all together, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive into the shrewd manager and the prodigal son?
What's the synthesis?
I think it boils down to this. We are all, in some way, like both the manager and the son, we're debtors. We're temporary managers, and we've all fallen short of God's glory, wasted his resources in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. We can't fix it ourselves.
We absolutely cannot rely on our own efforts. Not our merits, not our attempts to earn favor, not our fleeting earthly wealth. None of that can repay our sin or guarantee eternal life.
So the only solution is?
The only solution, shown so clearly in both parables, is total reliance on the master's, the father's, grace. The shrewd manager finally got it, rely on the master's generous character. The prodigal son received it, the Father's overwhelming, unearned grace.
And that grace comes through Christ's sacrifice. That's the master's resource that pays our debt.
Exactly. That's what secures our welcome into those eternal dwellings. Complete dependence on his provision, not our performance.
Which leaves us with that final, really provocative thought from Jesus, aimed squarely at his disciples, at us.
Yeah, that comparison.
If the sons of this age, the worldly-focused people, use temporary, unstable wealth with such intense shrewdness, such strategy, such urgency, just to secure an uncertain earthly future,
Planning meticulously for something that might not even happen or might bring ruin.
then how much more should the sons of light, those who know the eternal realities, use our limited time, our energy, our resources strategically? How much more should we invest with focus and urgency and outcomes that are guaranteed to last forever?
It really flips the script on what smart investing looks like.
It does. And it leaves us, and you the listener, with maybe one final, quite personal question. If you were truly banking on the master's character, on his grace, today, what's one single strategic decision you could make right now? What temporary asset, time, money, skill could you leverage differently to transform it into an eternal legacy?
Think shrewdly.
Think eternally.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.